All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and right here, right now, we actually have a music industry legend, veteran. This individual is the co-owner of the iconic Murder Inc. Records and also the founder of a brand new company titled Adventures Music that we're going to get into during this broadcast. But right here, right now, we got the man himself live on the air. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's great.
Hey man, you are most certainly welcome, man. I gotta say, I haven't been a fan of yours for many, many years, man. I actually learned so much just by like growing up listening to Murder Inc. records and the stuff you guys did and the business perspective of the music industry, man. You are honestly one of the best to ever come out of hip hop, man. So thank you for years of
Oh,
monumental music.
I appreciate that so much. It's funny because we're shooting our documentary. It's over 20 years now, and we're doing the documentary BET. We're doing a 5-part series on BET that'll probably be out this summer by June, July. Uh, that we were shooting, and it's so funny because when you go back and start hearing all the things, you kind of put it in perspective versus when you was going through it. You really didn't realize, so let's say, the magnitude of it or the effect it was having on the culture as you was doing it. You just was doing it, if you understand.
And also, Chris, I know you're a busy individual, man, so I'm going to dive right into this interview, man, but I want to take you back to the 1990s where yourself and your brother Irv actually started a production company titled Top Dog Productions. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about this company, and of course, what originally made you guys decide to get into business together and start that up?
Irv is one of one, and Irv had this production company, Top Dog Productions, and at the time, see, I started my brother. Irv's my little brother. I started him, but we wasn't making money when we started, and I just would help fund him and keep him moving with my construction business. And then, he's out running and doing everything, and then he got to a point he was A&Ring at Def Jam, and then the Top Dog Productions, he had a producer. He's making about 5,000 a beat, and he's like, but he needs to sell more beats, but he didn't have the time. And he calls me and tells me, like, Chris, I need you. Come on, like, I need you. And I was like, I'm there. It's my little brother. I always took care of him. I'm my brother's keeper at the end of the day. And I went out and I started doing both. And what the first thing I learned or noticed with the company was we didn't have enough product. Little Rob was one of the producers with Irv at the time, and we didn't have enough beats. So how can I sell beats or make money, even significant money, where it makes sense for me to be over here instead of doing my business? I was doing a lot of business in construction at the time, so it was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to grow it? So I tell Irv one day, I said, I'm going to go bring in some new producers to help put under the team in Top Dog. And all he said to me was, I don't care what you do, just don't make it. I'm not taking less than 5,000 a piece. And at the time, and I said, no problem. And I started bringing in these producers. And, I mean, we had some incredibly talented producers that Irv got to work along with. And, man, I took them from $5,000 a track to $50,000 in less than 6 months to $100,000 in less than a year. So we really grew exponentially from a business standpoint. And then what that did was get the attention of all the CEOs and the people, all the record labels. And really that's the birth of the Murder Inc. because of the success we had as production in producing all these hit records for all these other artists, including our own, But, as if everyone knows this real story, Ja Rule wasn't a Murder Inc. artist. He was signed to Def Jam. We did DMX. He was signed to Def Jam. We bring in Jay-Z, and they start their Rockefeller Records, and that's with Def Jam. But we're producing records with these guys. Then what happened is we started producing for all the Universal artists, even Sony artists. Tom Mottola at Sony was probably the most important person for Murder Inc. because he's the one that put the deal on the table at the time. And we didn't ask for a record label; he gave it to us.
And the one thing I have to ask, because as you said, like the money was popping up. Like Irv was actually upscaling his beats and whatnot. But the one thing I have to ask, 'cause I do know you were his manager back in those days as well, and I believe at that time, if I'm not mistaken, he was like producing individuals like Mariah Carey. I have to ask, what was it like just actually being so young and early on in your guys' careers, being able to work with such top dogs like Mariah Carey?
Well, it's funny. That's what I said. That while you're in that mix, for us, it was never about, let's say, being starstruck, or it was about, we're going to make a hot record. And I mean, Irv exemplified that to the highest level. So for me to just be right there and with it, it's like I already know who my brother is mentally, physically, like I raised him. So to know his mindset is not even an issue. That's when you're building a company, to have the mindset of all the people working with you is so important to be successful. And that's something me and him, we had that from the door. Like I said, he went left. I know left. He was already going left. I would know it in advance just because I know, who he is as a man. And that added such value, in my opinion, to the success, because I knew exactly what he wanted, how he wanted to do it. He wanted to be the biggest producer in the game. He idolized Dr. Dre. He always looked at Dr. Dre as being the best producer in hip-hop. And, it was just something that he was gunning for. Like, I want to be that in this space. And Dr. Dre, when we got to meet him, was really so, back then when we get next to him, and he was a huge fan of Irv's and vice versa. And I mean, it was really great to see the love and the camaraderie between two producers, iconic producers in music history, the hip-hop game.
And I also read as well that in the early 90s, you actually had the opportunity to work alongside Doo-Wop and the Bounce Squad for their 12-inch single, Hit 'Em in the Head. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about this classic, rare record, and of course, what was it like just working with them?
Well, again, we didn't. That was more Irv in the early '90s. That's again, while I'm not next to him, he's out making his moves. So I couldn't elaborate as much as I would like. And again, we was open to working. We grew up in Hollis, Queens. So at the end of the day, like Run DMC, Jam Master Jay, God bless the dead, would always come to the house. Hear music, ideas. This is early days, man. This is early 90s, late 80s. Like, you know what I mean? This is when they would come to the house and bounce ideas with Earth. So we was already kind of acclimated. LL Cool J. We even had Hype Williams, who's a dear friend who grew up in Queens with us as well. And we knew him from early days. He shot an R. Kelly video and brought him in Hollis and had the bus. My mother was actually just talking about that tonight. Like, who was that? And I was like, that was R. Kelly. So he brought R. Kelly to Hollis, Queens to shoot a video. And, I mean, it was pandemonium on our block, as you could imagine at the time, for R. Kelly to come up. So when you talk about these artists, again, we was really already running around from the groundwork, which before anything was Blunt Records and Mike Geronimo, and running around with him and building him up, and Royal Flush and things like that. You have Little John that was brought in over there. You have Little John. You had Pitbull, all on Blunt Records. Like, Blunt Records could have been a juggernaut if they was able to retain the artists we had brought in, because Jay-Z, DMX, and Ja was all over there as well, but never did the deal. Ja was in a group, Cash Money Quick. So at the end of the day, they was just too small and couldn't, as an independent label. Back then, the powers that be blocked, they swallowed those guys up. And, it's very different today, because independent artists have a big chance, and that's where adventure music comes in today.
And also as well, in 2001, Ashanti actually signed to Murder Inc. Records, where she actually earned, in my opinion, her big break, where she really got noticed. I was wondering, how did yourself and Irv actually originally discover Ashanti, and of course, what ultimately led to her record deal?
And that's a great story, because we had a friend who's like an uncle to us, named Mario Baeza, and Mario had Ashanti signed to a contract on his label called AJM Records that he had. Mario's a power attorney, and he was like an uncle to me and my brother and my family. Like, he knew my whole family, everything. And he had Ashanti, and he tells Irv, I want you to make some records for this girl. And I have Ashanti, but Irv isn't paying Mario any mind, because he's busy with Ja Rule and really getting Ja going and everything. And we get to I go and talk to Ashanti. I meet her mother, her manager, or co-manager at the time, Linda, and we go and sit down, we talk, and, they was already in other deals, unsuccessful. And then Mario had a studio in New Jersey and his house in, what's that, that would be Inglewood or Hillside, New Jersey. And it was, I would go out there, see Ashanti, and bring her music, bring her beats, and tell her write some songs to these beats, and I'll come back and, get them. And she was all excited. She was like, when am I going to meet Irv? And when am I going to talk to her? And I was like, yeah, don't worry. Now, I would go back to Irv and say, I think I got an artist that you might want to hear. And he would tell me he's focused on Ja Rule. So I'd go to Ashanti to the studio one day with her mother and Linda, and they want to talk to Irv, but Irv doesn't know they isn't there. And then I go in Irv's office and say, listen, I need you to do me a favor, come in here and tell them you heard their music, everything. And he's like, he gives me, I don't want to do this. Why you do that? I said, listen, just fucking do it, man, and stop playing. And I kept telling him she's a hell of a writer. Like, she's a hell of a writer. I didn't hear a big voice like a Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston. That wasn't the case. But as a writer, that girl had a pen. And she was a studio rat. She would be in that studio all night with me, wherever we was. I would start taking her out to different sessions with Fat Joe and all this, just so she would be around the environment and she was able to deal with it. And Irv comes in the room, gives him a quick handshake. Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, yeah. And how you doing? You can see they're so nervous meeting him. And, from anticipation, like this is their big break. And they're looking at Irv, and it's just great. For me, I love the story because it's so real. And I see it in all these artists, new artists today when they talk to me or someone, and that same anticipation, that, or nervousness when it's like their big chance, and they're sitting there. And she was like, how you doing? Did you hear my music? And I was like, yeah, Chris gave me music. But he didn't hear anything. And he said, listen, I got to go. I got to get in another meeting. But nice meeting you. And he walked out. And then I go behind him, and when I come back in the room, they're like, did he like us? Did he like? I said, oh, yeah, he loves it. He loved it. He loved it. But he didn't say nothing. I'm just really bringing him along because I'm working her to be there. And then what really broke her, because I go back to Irv one more time, and he I don't know if you know horses, and when they're racing, they put those blinkers on so they can stay focused in what's in front of them. And Irv gave me the blinkers. He said, I get money with Ja Rule. This is what how we get money. And I said, I hear you. And he was like, basically, he's telling me he doesn't want to be bothered with Shanti. So what I did was I went to Fat Joe studio session one day, and then he's doing the Big Pun album, the album after he passed, and they'll be doing some songs, and there's a song that needs a singer. And I say, who's our singer? He said, you got a singer? I said, yeah. And I called Ashanti. She's in Long Island. She's between, Burn Street and Glen Cove, and she drove right from there, right to the studio, came late to vocals, wrote that hook in no time, and they went crazy. All the Terror Squad, they loved it. And I said, could Joe do me a favor? He said, what's that? Well, I said, call my brother and tell him, Ashanti did this record and it's dope. And he did. And I'm standing right next to him, and he said, yeah, I love your artist, your new artist. And Irv was like, what artist? And sure enough, Irv called me after that and said, bring her in. And that was the beginning of the whole Ashanti birth. Because once he brought her in, now he's focused on her, and he actually went in the studio with her. And I kept telling him, she got a pen, and sure enough, she proved it.
And I have to ask as well, because obviously you said, she kept asking if, Irv heard the music, and obviously, Irv kept saying, oh, yeah, I did, when really he didn't. What was Irv's first impression when he actually heard, because I knew you told him about the pen, but when he first heard her record and her singing and her delivery, what was his, reaction when he first heard her?
his first reaction was, "I don't care how you're singing it, sing it like this." Irv would literally go in the booth and tell her how to sing a record. If I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Like, Ashanti knew pitch. She would sing exactly according to pitch and things of that nature, and she wrote the records with, Irv might have gave me her ideas, but she would bring those ideas to life with the words, right? So Irv might gave her the topic of what to talk about and the way to talk about it, how to talk about it. He really structured those records for her, and then she just took what he was saying and converted in word in song, and that's really the marriage. And then he wasn't, again, she doesn't have a big voice in that. She could sing. Don't get me wrong. Irv made her melodic and not with the big vocals. Like, don't go there. Let's go here. He's thinking of the landscape of music. He's not just looking at what she can do. He's looking at all the artists that are out there that if we go in certain ways, that they may be able to outperform her. We don't want to lose in that. Like, Irv is thinking about all of these things, not just one thing when he's making records, and we would talk about it, and again, he made incredible timeless records with her.
And also as well,
he wasn't. I'm sorry.
No. My apologies, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said he wasn't like blown away with her vocally. He really seen she had a pen though. And when Irv is with someone who's talented with that pen, there's no limit to where he could take it.
And also as well, in the same year of 2001, you were actually one of the executive producers on the Fast and Furious soundtrack. I was wondering, how did that opportunity originally arise for yourself and Murder Inc.? And of course, what was it like working on one of the biggest movie franchise soundtracks of all time?
Yeah, I know. That was a great experience. Again, I collected those songs, all of that album. I take a lot of pride in that. But again, at the end of the day, in the moment, you're just doing work, right? You're putting together what you feel is the best product you could put together. We're on fire. Universal had the soundtrack, and we basically said we want it. We want to do that. And once they gave it to Murder Inc., I told Irv I'll put it together. Me and him, we just started picking records, going to different artists, getting songs, and making songs, creating songs, and that was really the process. And Irv, again, the movie jobs in the movie, so we know the topics, we know where we want to go. We wanted to just create the best product we could. And again, it was just a lot of work, chasing artists down, getting the clearances and things of that nature, which we did. And the rest is history. But really, it was a great process, a great time. Everyone always says, why didn't Ja Rule do the next one? Because they definitely asked him to come back for the next one. Vin Diesel even told him, if you don't go, I'm not going to go. And that, if you remember, that's why Vin was out. But the reason Rule said no wasn't because he didn't want to do it. It's because he was on a tour, and he had a lot of money on the books. It's 8 figures, and there's more money on the tour side than it would have been on the movie side. Not realizing it's going to be a franchise that lasts this long and makes so much money, right? In hindsight, it's 2020. But it wasn't because he didn't want to do it or he got chosen not to. It was because that point, at that moment, time is everything for success. And at that time, that moment, it was more beneficial for him personally to go on the tour he was on.
And I got to say as well, I definitely think that if you would have been able to know that the Fast and Furious movies would go to, I think it's like Fast 9, or I think it might be working on 10 right now. I think if he would have known that, he definitely would have been full on for that project, because there's definitely would have been a lot of money.
Absolutely, Ludacris thanks him all the time, like as a razz or a joke, because that's his role. Rule would have been that role. Luda's in his Rule, in Ja Rule's part. And again, he thanks Ja for being on tour all the time, like as a joke. He knew the deal with all of this also.
And also as well, December 2nd of 2005, yourself and your brother, even with a 98% conviction rate, you both actually beat the feds and stood tall against the government. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about this victory, and of course, how did it feel to actually beat the odds and of course, make hip-hop history?
Again, I'll speak for myself and my brother, with certain parts, like there's certain things I wouldn't speak for him, but at the end of the day, the first thing I would tell you is we're men, number one, and which means we're going to stand on things that we did and didn't do, and that was the reality. Things they accuse of us, we didn't do. So I told my lawyer at one point, and the government was giving us incredible deals, breaking federal guidelines just to get a conviction. And I told my lawyer, and we're facing 20 years, and I told my lawyer, I'm not going to do a deal and incriminate myself or say something that I never did. That's not me. I said, so if that's what you're asking me to do, you don't need to be part of this either. And he was like, never. That's not what I'm asking you to do, because Gerald Shargell was absolutely an incredible lawyer, one of the best ever. And at the end of the day, when I said that to him, I said, let's just go set the time and date and let's go. They offered us 3 different deals during the course of the whole process of that case. And before we went to trial and trying to get a conviction, because most people, the reason they're so high, the federal system is so high, because most people just cop out because they don't want to face the time, right? And I'm not sitting there saying I'm any better than anyone else, but again, I'm not going to take a deal if I didn't do anything. And I told Jerry, I said, if it means I'm fighting from inside out, God forbid, that's what I'm going to do. We didn't do any of the charges they asked for. All we did was deal with someone that they deemed as a criminal, which is Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Again, we're products of our environment. I didn't know Supreme when I was a young kid. I knew him as a grown man making millions of dollars in the music industry. So what are you telling me? I'm going to convert to go into crime after I'm making legitimate millions of dollars after being broke my whole life? It just doesn't make sense. But they thought they could put the pressure on us, get Universal to cooperate against us, and then we're going to cave in, and they'll get their guy, Supreme. It's like, you're making a lot of money. You're going to tell me you're going to risk all of that? That's what the feds will come and tell me. And it just was sad because that's what they did. They took a 9-figure business from me and my brother and my family. But we'll bring it back tenfold.
And I gotta say as well, man, back in those days, especially the hip-hop police, man, they were just trying to shut everything down. They did the same thing with like Death Row Records and a bunch of others, man. So I'm really glad that you guys stood tall and actually and beat that, man, and showed them that they can't get away with bullshit. And excuse my language, but
yeah. But the only reason we're here is because it wasn't real. You know, the amount of agents they had on our case, you know, the amount of resources they use, amount of ink. Remember, they control all the publications. They smeared us. They slandered us. I mean, I had to listen to over 20,000 phone call conversations they recorded. It's like, what is this about? They had all of our SkyTel messages, you know, and they'd only recorded X amount of characters, so it would be half of an idea for the most part, right? And they're thinking they know something. I'm like, they're so wrong. It's crazy. They didn't understand the culture or the language we spoke and how we speak to each other. They thought when we say the 500, they're saying we're bringing $500,000. I'm like, we're talking about a Mercedes-Benz. You know, and then I would say Cristal. My daughter's name is Crystal. They're telling me I'm talking about champagne. They were celebrating for something that might have happened this day or something. Like, it was just asinine now. And I'm like, you're the government. You know better. You know everything. You know how we was raised. You know my family. You know everything. And I said, if I wanted to do crime when I was younger, doing stupid shit, I would have did it.
But also,
it was sad because the people we made all the money for, the universities of the world, they all cooperated against us with the government and stopped. They broke all our contracts. I mean, it was medieval what they did to us. And for us to still be here, again, when you say iconic, I don't argue because that's what makes us iconic, that we're still here, we're relevant. You know, we have a production company right now in television and movies, a visionary that Irv has built now that's back to a 9-figure business. Like, you can't stop us. And they know that. And that's where there's a lot of fear with a lot of executives because we didn't hold our tongue. You know, they came to me and said, why do I hire so many ex-convicts? I'm trying to help my community. You're telling me I'm a bad guy for doing that, and I don't believe in that. I said, anything I did, everyone always asked me, would I change anything? Why would I change something that was right? You only change things that's wrong. So if I was helping somebody in the right way, why would I say I wouldn't do it if I had to do it again? I'm not a creep. So at the end of the day, this is what they was coming at us with that made no sense to me. And I would say, you should give me an award. I'm saving lives. Maybe yours. Getting these guys off the street and giving them legitimate jobs. And they all ended up staying legitimate, doing work, real work in the industry. So it's like, come on. You don't even look at these things. You just want to talk your shit. And it's like, I'm not with that.
And also, as well, a lot of individuals they go back into the cycle of crime because they can't find a job because nobody will hire them. So the fact that you actually were like, hey man, let's get a job, you got them back on their feet and put them on the right path, man. So the fact that they were actually giving you guys shit for that is pathetic.
You mentioned the hip hop cop, but he used to follow me everywhere, along with this, literally everywhere, from Miami to LA, everywhere in New York, Chicago, wherever I went, they was there. I would physically see them and say hello. So this is no bullshit. The Feds, and they were in New York, the hip-hop police. They would come harass me constantly, okay? And they would see me with 20, 30 dudes or more every night out in the street, running from club to here, this club down here. Like, everyone talks it. I lived it. And they wasn't, and then I could tell you who was there in that era and wasn't there because I was there. You understand? And that's the difference. And when I hear the fakeness, I don't expose people because what's good is that? Let them live with their lives. I was physically there. And I physically did things because of situations we might have been in. So at the end of the day, they would see me. And one day, I'm leaving the China Club in New York City with about 25, 30 dudes. And they're all, man, I don't drink. I don't smoke. So, but they see me buy $30,000 and $40,000 worth of liquor in the club, all for my guys. But what am I doing is I'm trying to show guys that never seen this side of life, meaning someone legitimate spending legitimate money like that in a club. They never seen that. And I'm trying to show them, like, look, you could really do this. We could make this money the right way, and you good. You don't have to look over your shoulder. And they didn't understand that. So I said to one of the agents, I said, when I come out, and I'm sober as hell, drinking orange juice and cranberry or water all night, and they see, and I got a driver. I'm not moving recklessly. I got a driver, everything waiting in my car to pick me up. So even if I was drinking, I'm still good. But I don't drink. So I come out and I say to them, I said, what's wrong? I said, I offered y'all to come in. Why didn't y'all come in and get a drink? Because I went in and seen them when I walked right by them. I said, what's up? And I told them, come get a drink. They don't say nothing to me. When I come out, I said, y'all should have came and got a drink. I said, don't be mad at me because I can live like this and I can spend your year's salary in a night. Don't be mad at me. You picked the wrong profession. And then they would be like, they would be so pissed. But I'm like, I'm telling them the truth. Because they had a chip like they know me. They don't even know me. And I would say, come and talk to me.
I gotta say as well though, man. You know what I mean? Offering them a drink, man. I gotta say that's actually pretty funny. But you know what? They should have came in and got a drink. Maybe then they would have realized that you guys weren't bad people and you're just making a living trying to put food on your family's plates.
Yeah, I'll give you another one with the hip hop cop, Derek Parker, who wrote the book about the hip hop cop, who was the lead hip hop cop, which I knew. He was the guy. What did I do? I hired him as my security guard. I didn't need security. I'm walking around with 20, 30 dudes that'll die for me. Are you kidding me? At the end of the day, but I did it for a reason. I told my brother, I'm going to bring him in. And he said, what you doing? I said, I'm going to bring him in so he can see what we up to. Because that's all he wanted. They want a glimpse of what we're doing. He got to see me running a business, a nine-figure business. He got to see me with all of those guys they call criminals doing real work. And I'm forcing them to work, not just come and get a check. No one could extort me. No one. I would die. You would kill me for that. So at the end of the day, guys that don't know, like, oh, he was him, he must be getting money. No, these dudes I made them actually wait weeks to months before they can even get a job to prove that they're serious. Because this is business. This wasn't about nothing else. I didn't play no games. I did the same thing in construction. With all my dudes, I had a 37-man crew in construction, and we was doing everything. We was doing over $40 million a year in construction when I quit. And it came to music. So it's like they know me. It's no reason for them to act any other way. They know me. So at the end of the day, I didn't have. They would come to my house during the trial, like would be, coming when we're under investigation every other day, ringing my bell. I would come in. I would actually open my door and go back to bed, and let them sit in the living room waiting for me to get up. People don't know this side of what I'm saying. This is all facts. This is all what I dealt with physically on a regular basis with the feds. They would come in and they would, one day they knock on my door and say, "We found out some information." I said, "Yeah, what's that?" They said, "Someone's trying to, there's money, there's been a price put on your head, to kill you." I said, "Okay, so what are you going to do about it?" He said, "We just did," and they left. Meaning they told me, they're obligated to tell you if someone's trying to kill you.
And the one thing I have to ask, pertaining to this whole situation, because obviously, like you just told stories, you straight up dealt with it. If there's any hip hop artists that are like starting to get the fame and they start noticing that they have the hip hop police after them, man, what's some great advice you can give some of these artists that are dealing with the same stuff that you guys dealt with?
Well, the first thing is your circle, okay? So your first thing is your circle, because an action by someone inside of your circle will cause the problem, and you didn't even have to be you. I could say that's probably our case, right? So you go right to the circle. Now, if you're the guy, there's artists that are out here, I don't want to mention names because I don't know them, and I wish everyone the best. Okay, that's number one. I don't care who you are, I wish you the best. I hope you can kill it, make your money, take care of your family. But there are artists out here that if I was speaking to, I would tell them the way they're acting and moving. There's an expression that I took from Jay Prince, who's a dear friend, which was, if you campaign, you will get elected. And if you understand that expression, if they're out there doing saying things, don't be mad when that trouble comes your way. It's almost like you're wishing it will. And so, it's about your action. It's really about your action. And again, I could also say we move very militantly, and that may make people look at it. But again, I was just doing what I was trying to help people. They look at it as militant. It was probably the most approachable record label ever, and Superstar with Ja Rule ever. Anyone that pulled up to us, we let them come party with us, hang out with us, smoke with them. I don't smoke. They would smoke with them, everything. End of the day, I don't see no one else doing that. Everyone is real standoffish, like that air about them. We never had that. That's why Murder Inc. is iconic also, because of that persona we led out there. We made sure people, whatever city we was in, of course we had security with rule or whatever, but that velvet rope, that lifted up. Come on in. You want to come take pictures? Yeah, come on. Every time it was always love and election. Now, we also live by another expression, which was, if you insist, we will oblige. If you want the problem, we ain't running from it. You got it, buddy. No problem. And, I always tell people in the street, on that side of things, I'm undefeated. I ain't losing in the street.
And also as well, Chris...
Say that again?
I was going to say, right now, you are actually currently revolutionizing digital distribution for independent artists with your company, Adventures Music. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about your company. And of course, how can these independent artists actually get their music distributed by you?
Well, that's great. All of this came because just think of what I said, how they treated artists. They actually cooperated against us, and we generated them billions of dollars from all of the people we brought, all the labels. Just think, we're responsible for Rough Riders, Rockefeller, Murder Inc. Just those three alone is in the billions of dollars of generated revenue that Universal Island Def Jam got to receive. And you're going to cooperate with the government against us because you didn't want them to come after you. That was the deal. The government said, if you don't help us, we're going to come and investigate you guys. The reality is, Universal gave Supreme $1 billion, not Murder Inc., not Irv, not me, Universal. And they did it because it was a good business deal. It wasn't an illegal deal. It was business. But the government made it feel like, why are you giving this guy this kind of money? and it was for a soundtrack for his movie, Time Party. So he had Jay-Z on it, he had DMX on it, he had Ja Rule on it. So why let another label give him the money, which they would have? They keep it at home with those guys' artists, which is all Universal out of exception. So they did. But these are the things that made me create adventure music, because I seen how they treated labels or artists. They would tell us the artist, when we go to renegotiate Ja's deal, as successful as Ja was, they would tell us, don't give him what he's asking for. It's too much. And they would tell us, let him wait. Go get another artist and just keep going, and he'll take what we give him later. Now, this has come from CEOs. This isn't coming from no one else. So when I seen how they look at artists and treat artists, that's just not how I wanted to do business. And that's why with Adventures, the empowerment, the freedom, once the internet came into play, digitally we could do anything. We could reach millions of people for pennies on the dollar, which is cost effective for the lowest level artists if they know what they're doing. They just, today time is so, they rush everything. That's why songs are shorter, attention spans are shorter, and these artists are just quick, but that's losing, to me, that loses some of the, let's say, timelessness of this music. So we'll see. Test of time is good. It gives you all your answers. So we'll see. In my opinion, I feel that's part of what hurts the younger generation. I love their music. I love how they're moving. I just think they need to understand that, when you was an artist, it was a bigger deal than it is today. In the sense of, we made sure you looked like a star. You was out there. They don't do that today. They're like artists any day. I'm dealing with it. They're just putting out music. And again, I'm not knocking it because it's their generation and this is their time, not my time anymore. It's their time. But what they need to know is if they want to be bigger or more successful, it takes a little more planning. To run a record label is a lot. And they're basically all miniature record labels for themselves. So they have to understand all of that business, and that's where adventure music comes into play. I gave them all the freedoms. I vetted out all the services so I know if they're good or bad. If they use any services from Adventures, we stand by everything. If it says it's going to reach 1 million people, it reaches 1 million or more people. It will not reach less. If I say it's going to be on the radio for X amount, it will be on the radio for that. But these things are different today, and this is the challenge with these independent artists to help them understand. But everything I do from a company standpoint is to empower an independent artist. There's not one thing I do that I'm thinking about, this is going to be good for adventure music or for me personally. I'm trying to help the lowest artists every time when they come in, and I don't see one company that will ever do that for you. I'm accessible we have real people that respond, that have my philosophy and business acumen, that's going to talk to you about what needs to be done, that's been trained in that space. And this is, to me, priceless. If I'm an independent artist, and that's how I look at everything, I look at it, if it was me doing it as the artist, what do I need? And adventure music gives you everything you need. Distribution is simple. There's so many companies out here today that do distribution. We all do distribution extremely well. That's a given. It's what else do you get? And then why do they charge this versus why do I charge that? And I can explain everything. They charge maybe annually. I do a one-time fee for a lifetime membership. So if you're really putting out music in 4 years, typically you're spending more than what you would have spent if you was with adventure music. And I don't see the services that I offer to these artists available anywhere. We do tours and allow our artists to get half price for anything. If they're an adventure music artist, they get half price for anything we offer to come in. I mean, I can't do more.
And I gotta say as well, you definitely give them a wide range service, man. You give them a little bit of everything, man, to really dip their toe in the water in this music industry. I do see a lot of artists as well signing distribution deals with like Universal and whatnot. I have to ask, before you started Adventures Music, was that actually a good idea for artists to do? Because I've heard some horror stories just with record labels like that, man, that actually just do the distribution deals.
Well, I will tell you this. I just had this conversation earlier with someone very in the movie space, and I was helping them understand because they constantly hear all these bad deals. So the flip side to the bad deal is, number one, we're grown up. Okay, you don't play in a big boy space, and you don't want to be a big boy or big girl. Okay, that's number one, and that all that means is representation. You're an artist. You should have some type of representation explaining to you what you're signing. If you sign something without no representation, whose fault is that? That is your ignorance, and the only reason you would have done that, because if me and you offer someone that deal, there has to be something attached that they really want, which is financially all the time. So if someone says, "Here, I got $100,000 for you, but you got to do this deal." Here's what it says. Whether they read it or not, they just want that $100,000. Don't make your bed and don't want to lie in it out. See, I don't give one of the things I will not do for artists is give them an excuse. This business is so hard and difficult, I'll be only making it harder on them by lying to them or giving them the excuse and how they want to do it. That's just not the way it works. So we could go through all these artists. At the moment when they do those deals and the money they receive, they felt in their heart it was fair compensation. Now they grow into another type of an artist, and they're looking at it like, this is some bullshit. This isn't enough. And I understand that. And what we would tell any artist, you get an entry-level deal, it's your job to come back when you're not entry-level anymore, and we should break down business. We go through numbers together to see what kind of real money is being generated and what was spent. Because most of the time, they only see the money that they're receiving. They don't know what it took for a label to get them there. And I could give you tons of artists that were in these same shitty deals that made tons of money, as artists, because they renegotiated their deals as they grew, which is what every artist is supposed to do in those shitty deals. You have an entry-level deal because you came in at an entry-level spot position. That's who you were at that moment in time. That's it. They're not giving shitty deals to superstars. You understand? And they don't put it in perspective in the media, social media, and all these places blow it out like, oh, man, how did they do that? How did they do it? Because they don't understand all of the dynamic of what went on. And a lot of the time, they get that deal offered, and if they don't take it, they're stuck in quicksand, okay, because it's that hard. And they don't have the infrastructure to build around, right? That's what all these artists are really looking for, an infrastructure. At that level, at that entry-level position, imagine an artist talking to me about how much they could get when they can't even generate $100 in a month. If I show you the numbers of, on average, of what these independent artists generate, and I challenge any of these independents at the entry level to come and talk to me and show me a statement from any other distribution company they're at, then they would understand the value that I'm offering, because they're not generating any money. If they make in a year $500, that's a lot for most of these independent artists that start from scratch, from zero. And that's what you're dealing with when you have these type of companies. I'm not dealing with independent artists that had a 10-year career and they made X. No, they have a fan base. Most of these guys don't barely have 1,000 followers. How are you making money? You have to build it. And this is what they have to understand. If they don't have the right representation with them, the people around them, that's why I make them look in the mirror. They have to, I never heard an artist say, the reason something didn't work at all levels is because of me. They make an excuse why it didn't work for everyone but themselves. I put the mirror up in front of everybody, including myself. I have no problem saying, damn, I dropped the ball, I fucked up. I missed it. Because that's life. We're humans. We make mistakes.
And I gotta say, I bet you a lot of the individuals right now that are listening are probably wishing that this service you created, Adventures Music, was available to individuals in the 90s, even in the 80s, man, as well. Because I gotta say, so many labels were taken and skimming off the top and whatnot, man. But this would be a revolutionary service if it was started back in the 80s or 90s.
Well, this service started only because of one thing, and that's called the internet. So we couldn't have started before the internet started. We we started with Blunt Records, which was TVT Records, and Blunt was their record label. TVT Records did all the television tunes. That's what TVT stood for. All the cartoon music was owned by this guy, Steve Gotti. So we did a partnership to start Blunt Records, independent. We're fighting Universal, Warner Bros. Sony, but here's the problem. If we needed to get our music promoted across the country, not just the East Coast, okay, it costs a lot of money to physically get product or people to the West Coast, to move your product, to promote it, to connect that dot. And that is the problem. That's the problem with all independent labels from that era. You know, in my opinion, Jay Prince with Rap A Lot Records was the best that ever did it, you know, from an independent standpoint. But at the end of the day, you look across the board, and I promise you that was the biggest challenge. And that's why they never thought they would get anywhere. And look, I'm saying that in as big as Murder Inc., but they were still, again, from an independent standpoint, they did an incredible job because they got their music out. Again, radio promotion back then, there wasn't internet radio, it was just this, and this is how you had to do it. And it cost a lot of money. And if your record didn't work, you was in big trouble because you spent the money and you didn't get it back. And Universal, Warner Bros. Sony had a lock on all of those things, and they could easily bump a record out of the top 25, top 100 if they wanted to, if it wasn't one of theirs. There's no problem. Just think of a business. If radio is taking payola, for instance, in which we all know exists, and that's how it was done for the most part. If I'm spending all this money, I'm Universal, I'm spending all this money, and here comes a record by ABC Records. What? That's market share. I'm going to bump, that's audience. I'm bumping them out immediately. What? Or else I'm not going to spend my money with you. And ABC Records doesn't have the money I'm going to spend, so you're going to deal with me better. It's just business, and it makes sense. I get it. You know? And people could hate on it all they want, but that's the fact. These are the challenges you come up. Now with the internet, they can't block. They cannot stop. All these platforms out, they cannot control it, even though they're still trying to block. And I fight with these platforms all the time over it because what they're doing is Universal is going to Spotify, Apple's, and saying, this is what we expect, and make it harder for independents. Because they want to always control the hit or the superstar. They don't want that person or that hit record to be in the hands of someone else. So it's still difficult today because of these things, these barriers, these barricades that are getting put up by major record labels in all these outlets. And so, you know, it's still not freedom completely because of it. You know, in my opinion, Universal, Warner Bros. And Sony should not exist anymore in order to get to the true freedom for independent artists. Because as long as they exist, they're going to try and stop.
But I have to ask, what is next for yourself, Chris Gotti, and of course, Adventures Music? Is there anything we missed during this broadcast? Anything else you do still wish to talk about or promote? Well, we still got you here live on the Canadian FM dial this evening.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, we covered a lot. Adventure Music will become the biggest distribution company / marketing company in the world. It's that simple, and that's what I'm going to create. Everyone sits there and say, I will get you the reason, or at least, if I'm not the full reason, I will be the main part of the reason why Universal, Warner Bros. And Sony don't exist anymore. There's no need for them once I get my system fully acclimated, up and running, and there's no need for them anymore. We could do everything ourselves. We could do it internally. We do not need them, and we don't need them meddling in all that business and stealing all that money. You know, I believe it was Youngboy that just did a deal, and they was talking about, I just was reading, I believe it was Youngboy, but in his deal, I guess he's making over, in YouTube dollars, he's making over $1 million+ a month, but in his contract, in his contract, he doesn't receive any YouTube dollars. So the label's receiving all that money every month. And YouTube is part of the problem as well. They're blocking also. They always start to turn, again, in the record labels, again, is the only ones that have, let's say, the money to make the difference. Right? It's all about currency. It's all about that money, the resources. And they have the money to make a difference so they don't get pushed out, that they stay relevant inside of those places.
And also, Chris, this is the time in the interview quickly that I give a chance for the individual that does slide into the radio station Airwaves, just a chance for them to drop the social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and, of course, Adventures Music all across the board. But we are a hip-hop radio station, so I really hope they're already following you and your company.
That's right. I hope so, too. If you're on social media, you need to be following. I also have a podcast that I started, Giving Them the Business with Don De Niro. He's a Latin artist that me and him are partners. And we do a podcast called Giving Them the Business. We're on all platforms, including a Clash TV, which is a new streaming platform that we have as well. That's really doing really good for different things, from basketball, street basketball, high school basketball, high school football. So you could go on there and watch your favorite teams, or peak players from different states, if you know about them, just to watch their growth and development as they come through those ranks. And we do MMA as well. And we're about to start comedy and put some other podcasts on there as well. But Clash TV is definitely something that we're doing that's very important, along with Giving Them the Business. And it's so, it's all just how it sounds. Great conversations, great dialogue. You'll get more insight on business, all types of business, not just music, but I do tie it because it's powered by Adventures Music and Adventure Music. So with that being said, I always tie back the business into how, so you could understand it. If you was an artist and you understand your music business, you would understand how this business works, that business works, because it's all very, very similar and relevant to each other. All businesses, in my opinion, when you break them down, it's just what are you selling and what you're trying to make, how you make your money, and then it all kind of relates from there. And but Adventure Music social media is Adventure Music 1, and it's ADB Ventures, VENTURES Music, MUSIC 1. We was hacked when I was at about 50,000 followers, and they hacked me. And I don't deal with terrorists. They asked for, and it wasn't a lot of money. Just if I gave them the money, they're gonna hack me again, and I had to restart. But it's all good, it's part of the journey. And I lost my just plain Adventure Music handle. I called Instagram. I hate, they didn't care. It's not the email, because they switched it up and made it look like we didn't ever existed. Next thing, again, to get in touch with me on my Instagram is Chris Gotti 187. I always keep that 187 because if you know, that's still murder. So, no matter what, Murder Inc. is still there. But it's Chris Gotti 187, and you can get in touch with me or DM me or something. We'll usually get you back within that week, because I get so many DMs, and I'm always breaking down things. And I constantly work, man. I'm just always trying to find something that help these independent artists and break through, because my real goal is to get rid of Universal, Warner Bros. and Sony.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, Chris, quickly before we part ways, man, I gotta say thank you so much for just giving us a bit of your time here this evening and sliding into the 97.7 FM airways, man. I've been a fan of yourself.
Outlaw Radio, baby. This is Outlaw Radio. Come on.
I gotta say, man, it's truthfully an honor, man. I actually grew up, loving Murder Inc., like I told you at the beginning of the interview. I followed yourself and your brother for many years, man, and a lot of the stuff that I learned from you guys, I actually took into my own business to help build what we know as, and what you're on right now is 97.7, man. So thank you so much, man, for just chopping up game with us, talking music, and of course, telling these artists what the right distribution company they should go with, which is Adventures Music.
Absolutely. And again, that's ADDVENTURES Music, MUSIC.com. You can sign up right there, become a member, lifetime member, one-time free, lifetime member. You can leave me, come back, leave me, come back. You said once you're with adventure music, you're always with adventure music. And again, I want artists that have the experience with dealing with other distribution companies, because then you'll know the value of what we offer versus what you were getting somewhere else. It's the only way, and I don't want to knock those other companies because that's their business. But they all have their own agenda, and my agenda is the art.
But I gotta say, Chris, thank you so much again, man, for just giving us a bit of your time. I hope you have a wonderful night actually out there in New York, man. And hopefully down the line we can make this happen again sometime soon. And if any artists come my way that's looking for distribution, you already know where I'm sending them. Right to your doorstep.
Again, Outlaw Radio, I love it, man. Thank you for having me. If you ever need me again, just reach out, and let's go.
Hey, man, most definitely. Sounds like a plan, man. Thank you so much, Chris, and definitely have yourself a wonderful night, and of course, a wonderful weekend as well.
All right, you too, man.